The chamber is now back in session, and the floor is given to Defense Counsel for Nguyen Chia to resume questions to the witness. You may now proceed, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I only have 30 more minutes to ask you questions, so please be as brief as you can in answering my questions. Before the lunch break, I tried to jog your memory in respect of the things that Son Sen might have said to the cadres of Division 164 at those education sessions. I was trying to use a document of a colleague of yours in Division 164, but I will use another document instead to see if I can somehow refresh your memory as to what might have been said by Son Sen. Mr. President, I would like to refer to document E3/13. These are minutes of a meeting of secretaries and deputy secretaries of the various divisions and independent regiments. It's a document dated 9th October 1976. Mr. Witness, it is very clear to me that you have never been present at this meeting because it was only for the commanders and deputy commanders of the divisions. However, both the commander of Division 164, Mies Mut, and the deputy commander, Dim, were present. That's why maybe you might be able to tell us something about Son Sen's views and positions. Let me start by going to English page 009-40342, Khmer 005-2406, and French 00334-975. So Son Sen is addressing the meeting. Just before your deputy commander Dim has addressed the meeting, and in reaction to things that Dim has said, Son Sen says the following. He is distinguishing two forms of enemies, or two kinds of enemies. First, he talks about the enemy to the west. He talks about enemies from the west attacking islands, especially Koh Tang and Koh Wai Island, and that these traitorous forces belong to Son Nrak Tan, the person that we discussed briefly yesterday. My question, Mr. Witness, is have you ever heard Son Sen say something similar in those education sessions, that there were two enemies, one enemy from the west and obviously one enemy from the east?
During the study session with Son Sen at Olympic Stadium in Phnom Penh in 1976, at that time he talked only about the organization of the army to take charge of strategic locations of Cambodia. In the northeast, they included Mundulgiri, Ratanakiri, and to the coastal area of Cambodia. That was what he talked at that time. And later on, he talked about the enemy who caused trouble to democratic Cambodia, and the enemy included two types. One was the external enemy, and another one was the internal enemy. And he emphasized that if the external enemy caused trouble, there needed to be strategic fighting in the form of spying in Cambodia.
But do you remember him when he was talking about external enemies, making a division in respect to the, on the one hand the enemy to the west, and on the other hand the enemy in the east? Was there a distinction in external enemies, enemies from the east and enemies from the west?
I remembered what he talked about the west enemy. It's about Thailand. He said that the border with the Siamese, some of them came into Cambodia. They crossed the border to cut woods. They were not the strong enemy because they could be defeated by our troops. Because those people were not experienced fighter. But he wants us to be careful with the enemy from the east, because they could penetrate into Cambodia and they could take the land along the border with Cambodia.
Thank you, Mr. Witness, for that clarification. Moving one page in that same speech from Son Sen, English ERN 009403343, French 0033496, and Khmer 00652406. He said the following to your two commanders, or the Division 164 commanders and the others, and I quote, second, the enemy to the east. The key plan of the enemy of the east, the Vietnamese with the Soviets behind them, was to attack from the inside through the traitorous forces of Ya, Kumis, Chuk and Chakrai. What they would have liked in terms of an attack from the outside was to attack in the Czechoslovakian and Angolan style. And then it goes on. Mr. Witness, do you remember Son Sen speaking about the key plan of Vietnam to attack democratic Kampuchea from the inside?
Based on my recollection, he said that in Cambodia there were spy agents who belonged to the Vietnamese and Soviet. And they were members of the Soviet so-called Warsaw Pact, which was created in East Germany.
Thank you. I will move on, Mr. Witness. 6 months after this meeting, the Deputy Commander of Division 164, DIM, was arrested. He was arrested, I believe, at the 21st of April 1977. I understand that you do not know the reason for DIM's arrest. But have you heard something from other cadres or maybe from Son Sen during those meetings? What could have been possibly the reasons behind DIM's arrest?
When Dums was arrested, it was in a situation which the information was limited to me. I was not aware much of it, and I think other people were also not aware of this, because cadres at the lower level could not know much about the affairs of the upper echelon.
I understand. Mr. Witness, in your statement to DCCAM, I believe also in your WRI, you speak about the principle of secrecy. Does that principle mean that lower cadres weren't exactly informed as to reasons of arrest for higher ranking cadres?
Based on the principle of secrecy, we were not informed, because the principle of secrecy means only those who did it knew about it. So it meant I was not aware of the activities responsible by other people.
I understand. Thank you for that answer, Mr. Witness. Have you ever heard, maybe much later, maybe even after 1979, whether DIM was somehow connected to a standing committee member called Von Vet?
As far as I know, as I have read the document of the court, but the document was given to me on the second night, and I saw the names of people listed, and I was told to point to which names in the list that I could identify. Because the investigators would like to know how many names, whose name I could recognize.
I'm not sure if you were shown the name of Von Vet. Actually, I don't think you were, but let me move on. Ms. Witness, with the last question in relation to the education sessions or meetings that you and other Division 164 members had with Son Sen. Do you recall whether during those meetings Son Sen ever spoke about coup d'etats or military coups taking place in Phnom Penh to overthrow Pol Pot?
Regarding this information, I received during his lecture, but I was not certain about how many people were involved and what were their plans. Because during that political study session, two military cadres, and that was what he raised at that time.
And do you remember whether he spoke about one coup d'etat or maybe even 4 or 5 coup d'etats which were supposed to take place and all failed?
I could not remember how many military coups were planned at that time.
Another question about Son Sen. Do you know which code number Son Sen used in telegrams, or if telegrams were sent to him, which number was used to address him?
I could not remember well, but at that time I knew one number, which my higher level authority told me that it was number 87.
That was actually exactly my question. I believe Son Sen was called Brother 89 in telegrams, but there also seems to be a Brother 87. So my question is if you know who Brother 87 was.
The telegraph from number 87, as far as I can remember, is from the upper echelon.
That I assume as well, but was it maybe the Deputy Secretary of the General Staff, or is it something that you don't know?
I don't know clearly about this because it's my higher supervisor at the level of the regiment would know about this, but he told me that it's from the upper echelon.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. 10 more minutes for two subjects I would briefly like to discuss with you. Let me refer to your DC Chem statement. Do you recall saying something about difficulties of communication between Chinese radio equipment on the boats and American equipment used on land in Kampong Som?
I can still remember because at that time the Chinese vessel
it was difficult to communicate because the Chinese vessel used a different communication system than from the mainland.
So if original Chinese boats or vessels were patrolling the seas around Bulawayo Island, for instance, was it then difficult for the people on that boat to communicate with headquarters in Kampong Som?
Through my personal experience, the communication system employed by the headquarters in Kampong Som and the one used on the Chinese vessel was different because the headquarters in Kampong Som use telegrams. However, each vessel was designated a different code also used through the telegram communication.
But if a patrolling Chinese vessel would stumble upon a situation in the territorial sea and they had to act immediately, how would they communicate with division headquarters in Kampong Som?
The Chinese vessel that I was on, and through my experience, the communication system there was simple, and the navigation was also simple. We did not have much difficulty in our communication because the system provided by the Chinese was compatible with that at the headquarters, and the crew on the vessel received training, and also the combatants at the headquarters received a similar training so that they could communicate.
Thank you. My last subject, Mr. Witness, and that is what was to be done with refugees, or rather fishermen from Thailand. What was the instruction if a Thai fishing ship would enter the territorial waters of Democratic Cambodia? What was the instruction to do?
What I'm going to say is based on the information that I heard. That is the information that I did not personally experience. At that stage, the patrol boats were deployed. However, it could not be deployed to cover the entire territorial waters of Cambodia. They received a year training for that matter. However, the entire system was not fully operational. Secondly, when the Thai fishing boat entered the territorial water of Cambodia, then the soldiers stationed on the island would take action either to chase them away or to stop them encroaching further into the territorial waters of Cambodia, as they actually violated the sovereignty of Cambodia and such. And one day I received an information through the radio communications that a Thai fishing boat encroached on the Cambodian territorial waters. And in fact, there was an old American ship from the colonial regime, that is the Pe Song Ong or P110, and with the deterrent of that boat, then the Thai fishing boat withdrew from the territorial waters of Cambodia.
Thank you. I understand there are also situations that boats with Thai fishermen were indeed stopped, and that Thai fishermen were indeed brought on land to be questioned. In your DC Chem statement, you indicated that once they had been questioned, the problem would be solved, quote unquote, diplomatically. What exactly did you mean when you said that problems with Thai refugees would be solved diplomatically?
President witness, please hold on, and the Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been quite patient so far, and I understand that Council Koppe is trying to go fast, but here, not mentioning the sources, that is to say, summing up the witness's statements without quoting what he said precisely, and asking him to confirm this information, well, this requires that he at least quote the segment involved. I think that this would be fairer for everyone and more appropriate.
No problem, Mr. President. I was referring to E3/9113, English ERN 009742221. I do not have the Khmer.
Council Copper, please repeat the EN numbers and do it slowly this time.
Of course, E3/9113, English ERN 009742221. I will give you the Khmer ERN in a minute. What he says, Mr. President, is the following. I was instructed that when there were boats coming into our territorial waters, we could seize them and had to report upwards to solve the problem diplomatically. A little further, he refers to diplomatic discussions. My other source is E3/2314, English ERN 001-65983, French 00768209, Khmer 0072246 and 467. That is a newspaper report talking about a agreement between Thailand and Democratic Cambodia on the return of Thai fishermen, a diplomatic pact, so to speak. So these are my two sources. So my question again, and this will be my last question, Mr. Witness. What do you know about these diplomatic discussions between Thailand and Democratic Cambodia in relation to those Thai fishermen that had been brought to the shore?
The use of the word diplomatic is based on the information that I heard. Whatever happened at the territorial waters, namely regarding the seizure of a Thai fishing vessel or any other vessels for that matter, we had to deliver them through the international relations section or department so that the matter could be solved at their level in line with the policies of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, I did not know the details of the procedures or how the resolution was carried out, nor did I hear it in a person. I only heard this information through my upper level, at the regimental level, for instance, who attended the meeting and who received information from such a meeting.
Have you heard whether most, maybe all, Thai fishermen were at one point in time released?
What I heard is that the matter was referred to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and how the matter was referred to was beyond my knowledge. The Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to object because I was waiting for the French translation, and that was a bit belated, and the witness already was answering. But I think that these questions are very generic, and they make absolutely no distinction between the periods, which is very important. It's important to say, when he says that at one point in time they were liberated, that's not specific. So, therefore, I don't believe that the witness's answers can be specific. I think that certain periods should be distinguished regarding the fate of the Thai fishermen.
And Co-Prosecutor, your time will come, and if you need to clarify this matter, you can use your time to pursue this issue, and it will come next. Councillor Copper, you may continue.
I will finish my questions, Mr. President. Two small things. I still owed you the Khmer era end of that particular excerpt from his DC camp statement on solving the problem diplomatically. That is 009-26398. And my second point is maybe a matter of clarification, but my request to have the DC Chem statement that I wanted to refer to this morning, that I would still like to have that admitted into evidence. We filed an oral request, or made an oral request, but in my recollection this request is still pending, so hopefully before next week's witness you will have an opportunity to rule on that request. Mr. Witness, thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Counsel, the oral request should be reasoned. I mean, are you referring to what you said before the break, which was basically I want this to be admitted as under 87.4?
Well, I don't want to steal time from my colleague, but the relevance of this DC Chem statement is, from the first page, immediately obvious. It's a Division 164 commander who talks in detail about what happened at the territorial sea. There are two WRIs from him in the other case. It's very, very precise as to command structures in 164, so there's absolutely zero reason to think that this document is not in any way relevant to this particular segment.
I would like to hand the floor now to the defense team for rather. I hand the floor to the defense team for Khieu Samphan. Do you wish to put the questions now to the witness, or do you wish to put the questions last, defense counsel for Khieu Samphan?
I apologize, Mr. President. I have a slight problem with my headset. No, indeed, we would like to proceed, that is to say, to follow the Nunchia defense and to speak last.
Yes, I think that is the practice, and we actually determines the time allocation and the procedures already. And now the floor is given to the co-prosecutors.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon to all parties. Good afternoon to you, witness. I'm going to put questions to you on behalf of the co-prosecutor's office today and tomorrow. And my name is Vincent de Wilde. I'm going to ask you to listen to the questions carefully. If you do not understand, of course, tell me so. There's no problem about that. And I'd also like to remind you that you're here only as a witness to say the truth and to assist the chamber in discovering the truth. In no case you are being accused of anything here. So I would like, first of all, Mr. Witness, to get back or to revisit a topic that was brought up yesterday by the defense counsel. That is to say, what happened to the soldiers and officials of the Lon Nol regime. Yesterday, you said that you left Phnom Penh to travel to Kampong Som the day Phnom Penh fell on 17 April 1975. And you said that you did not harm the Lon Nol soldiers you had met along the way. And however, at around 3:41 in the afternoon, you said that later on, after your training in Kampong Som, you heard about the fact that Lon Nol soldiers and officials had been executed in 1975 or 1976. So can you tell us what you heard regarding the execution of the former officials and soldiers of the Lon Nol regime?
From what I heard, it was the information from the combatants or cadres who spoke outside the meetings and not in the meetings, and they spoke out of their involvement in the meetings or the conference.
Fine. And what were these cadres and combatants saying outside of the meetings regarding the execution of the former Lon Nol officials and soldiers? For example, where? In which locations were these people executed?
I heard they said that the Lon Nol soldiers were killed, and they gave an example. For example, while they were en route, they came across a location where they saw two dead bodies to the west of Kampong Seila. Here I refer to those forces who walked behind me. And I responded that I did not see those dead bodies when I walked past, and we conversed in the form that we were combatants. However, I cannot recall as to who I spoke to or who told me about that. And this is what I can recall of what happened at the time, and as you may know, it happened several years ago.
Fine. When you left Phnom Penh the day it fell, 17 April 1975, is it fair to say that you did not know what happened to the high-ranking officials or servicemen of the Lon Nol army in Phnom Penh?
In fact, I myself never anticipated as to what happened next. While I was en route, I took the combatants with me in order to reach our destination, that is Kampong Saum, and we were on foot. And I never anticipated that there were high-ranking Lon Nol soldiers or ordinary Lon Nol soldiers who were killed. My main task at the time was to only lead my group of combatants, and I did not receive such instructions.
Merci.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to be a little bit shorter in your answers, if possible.
Deputy Co-Prosecutor, please hold on, and Councillor Corpert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. An observation in a belated form of an objection, but I don't believe the witness yesterday spoke about execution of Lon Nol officials. I'm not quite sure what he said. He might have said the word kill, but obviously that is in principle lawful action in a war. So there's a big difference in, especially when he speaks about the period April 75, in talking about killing as a combat action versus execution, extrajudicial execution. So please, Mr. Prosecutor, if you can clarify this.
Well, the question about Phnom Penh, well, for that question I used the word execution because Phnom Penh had already been captured then, so there was no war any longer. And it also, Councillor Koppe, when he formulated his question, he said the following: do you know if after the fall of Phnom Penh, the officials of Lon Nol were executed either in the second half of 75 or in 76? So the word execution was used by the Defense Counsel himself. So I'm going to therefore continue, Mr. President. Witness, do you know if Meas Moot, your chief of Division 3 at the time, traveled to Koh Kong with a part of his troops in the days that followed 17 April 1975? Did you hear about something to that effect?
Based on my recollection, I did not receive such information. Upon my arrival in Kampong Saum, I did not receive information that military commander Mihmut went to Koh Kong. I myself did not know his whereabouts or where he went to for any particular purposes.
Earlier, you said that soldiers in your division were speaking about executions outside of the meetings. So during the meetings, did Mia Smoot himself or his deputies ever speak about the policies of the Communist Party of Kampuchea or of the Army's actions vis-à-vis the officials or higher-ranking servicemen of the Lon Nol Army?
What I can remember is that he did not mention anything about the military officials or civil servants of the Lon Nol regime. In the meeting, he spoke about the tasks that we were assigned to do. As in my case and my unit, we were tasked to prepare ourselves in order to be equipped with the vessels that were to be given to us by the Chinese.
Bien.
Fine. Now, regarding Koh Kong, I would like to quote what a witness said before the OCIJ, a witness, in fact, who testified before this chamber on 7 May 2015 in another segment of this trial. And I'm going to put questions to you with regard to what he said. This is the testimony of Ek Eun or Ul Eun, and this is document E3/9582. And I'm going to quote what he said at answer 89. First, the question is the following. Regarding Mia Smoot, after the Khmer Rouge took power in April 75, Tamut or Mia Smoot went to Koh Kong and ordered the Lon Nol soldiers to surrender and turn in their weapons, and then he killed them all. This is what you stated in your interview with the DCCAM. Is this true? Answer from Ul Eun, yes, that is true. Question 92. In your interview with DCCAM, it appears that you said that Tat Nhan, NHA2NN, one of Mia Smoot's lower-ranking officers, brought together Lon Nol soldiers in the groves to eliminate them. Is that correct? Ul Eun's answer, yes, that is true. Question 96. How many vehicles were used to transport these soldiers? Ul Eun's answer, it was Mia Smoot who had to keep their weapons and their equipment. They said that they were going to drive the soldiers back home, but in fact they executed them in a forest next to a coconut plantation and a durian plantation. Question 103. How is it that you are aware of the execution of the Lon Nol soldiers in Koh Kong? Answer, Ul Eun's answer, therefore, because they moved the troops several times and the soldiers talked about what happened. This is why I got to know about this. They started ordering the Lon Nol soldiers to dig pits next to the trees and then executed them and dumped them in the pits so that the bodies could be transformed into fertilizer. And finally, answer 109, Mia Smoot ordered the execution of all government soldiers who were stationed in Koh Kong. In the provinces, the governors personally ordered the executions of the Lon Nol soldiers. End of quote, free translation. So in light of this testimony, I'm putting the question to you again. That is to say, did you ever hear about the execution of Lon Nol soldiers in Koh Kong by members of Division 103, right after 17 April 1975?
At that time, my unit never received such information. And through the account of Un that you just quoted, I myself is not familiar with that name or which unit he was attached to, or how he became to know Mahmud, or whether he was a subordinate to Mahmud. What I can say is that I was responsible for my own task, and I did not obtain such information. And my responsibility was to prepare my team in order to be trained for the operation of the new vessel.
And closer to where you were, that is to say, Kompong Som, which was directly under the authority of Division 3. Do you know what happened to the high-ranking soldiers or officials of Kompong Som after the city was captured by the Khmer Rouge forces?
For the Kampong Som, I myself was at my own barrack. I did not have any involvement with the administrative work or on how to manage the town. Even for me, I could not even enter the town without a travel permit. So my knowledge was limited to what I experienced or saw, and I could not know everything. As I said, my task was separate from theirs.
Well, yesterday you said that Division 164 had become a division depending on from the center in June 1975, whereas before in your WRA you said June 1976. So can you confirm the date of June 1975 as the date when Division 164 became a division of the center? That is to say, it changed names.
The Division 164 was changed to Division of the Center in June 1975.
And when you were transferred from the infantry to the Navy, that is to say Regiment 140, did this happen during this period approximately? That is to say around June 1975 or in the middle of 1975?
I was detached from Division 3 in order to be with the Regiment 140, and that happened from my recollection in June 75.
Fine, I'd like to clarify a point here, because yesterday and today I heard that you said that you had been in charge of technical training within the Navy. So I'm not sure I understood that very well. Did you yourself attend a technical training session as a commander or as the commander of vessel 17/10, or did you provide training to other people?
Allow me to clarify that. Initially, I was not part of the crew on vessel 17/10. Actually, there were 4 vessels at the time, 101, 102, 103, and 104 respectively. And I was in charge of training for the crew, and there were 38 crew. For vessel 102, not the vessel 17/10. In fact, vessel 17/10 was given to us at a later stage, and I myself was not a trainer. We received a training from an instructor from China, and he was a Chinese.
Fine. Now, I would like to quote what you said to DCCAM document E3/9113 on pages 26 and 27 in English, and Khmer 0092 6361 262. And I'm going to quote this segment in English because there's no French translation.
I quote, "The company chiefs were chosen to be trainees thereon." Question, were the company chiefs selected to be trained? Your answer, yes. Then at page 27, I quote, "We were trained about navigating, engine repair and maintenance, weapons, electricity, telecommunications, telegrams, walkie-talkies, and flag signals." And a little further down, it was conducted at Ochetil. It was in 1976, and the training lasted for 6 months. Et dans la même
And in the same DCCAM interview later, on pages 29 and 30 in English and in Khmer 00926364 up to 65, you stated as regards the training in 1976 that it ended in 1976, probably in August, and thereafter you worked permanently on the boat. Can we therefore say that at the end of your training around August 1976, you worked for about 2 years on your boat, number 17/10, as the captain of the boat or as a navigator? Which are the terms you use in your interview with DCCAM?
After I was tasked to take charge of that boat, I was not the captain I was not the navigator of that vessel, but I was the overall captain of that vessel.
D'accord, est-ce que vous êtes...
Very well. Did you also go to China to undergo training? Or it was other persons who went to attend such training?
For the technical aspects, I did not go because we received training from Chinese instructors at Ochetil. Those who were sent to study were sent to study on the technical aspects of the torpedo boats or the patrol boats. These were the terms that they used while I was there.
Bon, et votre...
Very well. And your boat, 17/10, you described it differently. Was that a battleship or a patrol boat? Can you clarify this matter, please?
The vessel under my supervision was a defensive vessel. However, its main task was to patrol the territorial waters of Cambodia, and that was the task that I involved in. And from 1976 to 1978, we were tasked with missions from the upper level to go on patrol in the vicinity of Koh Tmei Island, Koh Seh Island, which was not far from Koh Trol Island.
Dans votre
In your DCCAM interview, you also talked of Korisei and Kokta Kiev. Were these also islands that were close to Koh Tmai and Koh Ses, close to the Cambodian coast and the Vietnamese island of Koh Tral?
Allow me to clarify the matter to the chamber. Regarding Koh Risai and Koh Takiew Islands, they were close to a rim coast, and that was the Koh Risai. It was a different from the other island, which also named the same, that is Koh Risai, which was close to Troll Island.
D'accord, à part ces 4 îles.
Very well. Apart from those 4 islands, since you were also sent to other zones like Oten, Korom, Sarem, and Koh Pulo, why?
In fact, Koh Tang and Pulawai Chah and Pulawai Tmai Islands, during our vessel training, we actually navigated the vessel to the vicinity of these islands. That is to practice what we learned through our study. It was kind of a hands-on experience.
Bien, je voudrais poser.
Very well. I would like to put some questions here regarding the structure of Division 164. And you said that Ms. Mutt was at the head of the mission, assisted by his assistant. My question is as regards Regiment 140. Who was the head of that regiment and who was your battalion commander?
In Regiment 140, there were 2 commanders. One was Sarun, and another one named Som from the Eastern Zone. For my battalion, the commander was Horn. And to my knowledge, up to now, the 3 commanders passed away.
Est-ce que vous connaissiez le nom
Did you know Sarun's full name?
plus directement? Est-ce que cela pourrait être
And to be more direct, could it be Chim alias Samun, which is somewhat different? Can you tell me whether it's the same person or that's another person? Do you know the full name of Sarun?
I cannot recall that. However, I know his father, and his father's name is Korn. So I do not know whether he used his father as his family name as Korn Sarun, or maybe he used his grandfather's name as his family name.
Et concernant Horn,
And as regards home, do you know his full name?
The name is not Horn, but it's Horn. And I do not know his family name.
combien de personnes y avait-il dans
How many persons were in your Marine Regiment 140?
In Regiment 140, if you combine the forces from former Division 3 and those forces from the East Zone, the total force was 1,400.
Et je ne suis pas sûr que vous avez dit
I am not sure you said so yesterday or today. How many members were in the entire regiment 140? There were other battalions that didn't come under the authority of the regiment. If you do know them, can you tell us what they were?
As to the number of soldiers for each battalion, I already testified that there were 4 battalions under each regiment, and there were also 4 companies under each battalion. And there were about 100 forces for each company.
quelles étaient les tâches du bataillon 450, est-ce qu'il dépendait
Were all the regiments under Division 164, or they belong to the headquarters of the Division 164?
For Unit 450, it was a special unit for the division, and its task was to be stationed around the divisional headquarters.
Est-ce que c'était cette unité spéciale
Was it a special unit whenever there were disciplinary problems or cases of people who didn't obey orders when it had to do with the arrest of soldiers of Division 164?
I did not know about their specific task. However, what I can recall is that their unit was known as the Special Unit for Division 3, and that designation number, that is 450, remained unchanged. During the war prior to 17 April 1975, it was a combat unit in the hot battlefields. Usually for tense or intensified battlefields, this unit was sent.
Peut-être la dernière question avant la...
This will be the last question before the break, Mr. President. What was the regiment that was stationed, that is the division of 164, stationed in Coxey and Côte-May, very close to where the boats were generally stationed?
There were other 2 units that I am not sure about. It could be 62 or 65. However, I can recall that There were 3 regiments stationed on the islands, namely Rung, Tang, Pulawai Cha, Pulawai Thmai, Seh Islands. And as I stated in my previous interviews, there were Regiment 61, 62 and 63, but I am not sure whether Regiment 63 was stationed at Koh Thmai Island or Koh Seh Island. My apology for that, because this matter happened a long time ago. President, thank you. It is now convenient for our short break. We take a break now and resumed at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses during the break time, and invite him as well as his duty counsel back into the courtroom at 3 o'clock. The court is now in recess.